So far we have learned about different data types in Python. These data types are also called as primitive data types or fundamental data types in Python. And some of these are integer or float, string, boolean, right? Today we are going to talk about collections in Python. Collections in Python are also called as data structures, or you can also call them data types, but they are not fundamental data types. They are built on top of these fundamental data types. So collection, like the name suggests, it is a collection of multiple elements in an organized way. They are built up of primitive data types and or strings that hold a single value, and they will allow us to store multiple related values together. This could be a group of numbers, strings, or even more complex structures like a list or a dictionary. So in this video, I want to give you an intuition of what is a list in Python. Also, these collections are built in data types in Python and or built in data structures because they will allow us to organize and access and manipulate data very efficiently. So we are going to talk about four data structures. The first one is called as a list. The second one is a dictionary. Third one is a set, and then we have tuple, and we also have string actually. So string I have shown you as a fundamental data type, but it can also be a collection. It can also be a collection because a string can be made up of other strings. So in this video we are going to focus more on the list, and we'll learn some basic concepts of list. And once we have learned that, a lot of those concepts will also apply to dictionary, set, tuple, and string. Okay, so before we jump into Python implementation, I want to mention a few things about list that will be very helpful in order for you to understand list better. So let us get started with that. So let us talk about lists. So if you hear the word list, the first thing that comes to our mind is the list that we create in our daily life. For example, a shopping list or a grocery list, or a list of topics that you want to study for your exam, or a list of chapters in a book, right? Or list of places you want to visit in a city. So if you want to create a list normally in our daily life, suppose if you want to create a shopping list, we take a piece of paper, right? And we start writing down, first is maybe aloo, and second is gobi, and third is maybe dhania, and something. We make a list like this. Now if we want to create this kind of a list in Python, there is a certain syntax we want to follow. But before we get into that syntax, let us observe a few things about this list, and what are some of the things that we would want to do in a list, or what are some of the things that we need in order for a list to exist in the first place. So the first thing is that a list is a collection of multiple items. So aloo is an individual item, gobi is an individual item, dhania is an individual item, and we are combining them together to create a list. So by that definition, a list is a collection. Second is that there is a sense of order in this. The first element is aloo, the second element is gobi, the third element is dhania, and maybe there are 100 items in this list, in which case we will say that the list is 100 items long, or the length of the list is 100. Okay, now what are the few things we would want to do in a list? Sometimes we might want to add something to a list. Okay, suppose we want to add a new element here, matter. So we should be able to add something to a list, right? We should be able to remove something from a list. Suppose if we have bought gobi, or if we have changed our mind about gobi, we should be able to remove gobi from this list, right? And we should always be able to answer that what is the third element. If someone is asking me what is the third element in your list, then I should be able to say, okay, third element is dhania. What is the first element in your list? Aloo, right? So there is a sense of order, there is a sense of sequence. There we should be able to add something, we should be able to remove something, and we should be able to answer how many elements are there in the list. So these are some of the things, or some of the ideas around a list, right? And by this extension of this idea, we are going to say that a list is ordered. Okay, we'll also say that a list is mutable. Mutable means, mutation means changing. You might have heard of DNA mutation, or mutants in X-Men, because their DNA has been mutated, so they become something else. So in the same way, we should be able to mutate a list. We should be able to change a list. We should be able to add something, or remove something, or change something. Suppose if instead of third element, if we want the third element to change from dhania to palak, okay, we want to replace dhania with palak, we should be able to do that as well. So that is called as changing. So all of these things are properties of a list. Now let us see, if we want to create the same list in Python, what are we going to do? So there is a syntax to it. Okay, so I'm going to take this list and let me create it in Python. So if you are creating it in Python, we use square brackets to denote a list. So a list will be denoted by square bracket like this. This will be a list, and inside this we can add all the elements that we want. So suppose for example our first element is alu. So this alu here is a string, right? And this one string is one element of this list. I can add another element by using comma. We'll separate it with comma and we'll say gobi. Okay, and third element is maybe palak, and we can name this list as anything we want, just like how we name variables. We can call this maybe x. So x is now a list, and if you try to find out what is the type of x, you will get it as a list in Python. I'll show this to you later. Okay, now very important concept in list is how is the order maintained. Okay, in order to maintain order, or in order to mutate the list, we always need to keep track of where which element is. For example, in this list we say the first element is alu, or the second element is gobi, third element is palak. So here also we need to maintain the same thing. So in a list there are two things you need to keep in mind. The first is the value, and second thing is index. Index is also address. Okay, so here what are the values? We say that the first value is alu, the second value is gobi, the third value is palak, right? But in Python we don't start the counting from 1. We often start the counting from 0. In almost all the programming languages the counting always starts from 0. Barring a few languages, we'll always start the counting from 0. So if you want to say what is the address of alu, intuitively you will say the address of alu is 1, the address of alu is gobi is 2, the address of palak is 3. But no, in Python we will say that the address of alu is 0, and gobi is 1, and palak is 2. It's always -1 because we are starting the counting from 0. So 0, 1 and 2 we will call as index. These are index, or we can say position. Whenever we are writing code, we will use 0, 1 and 2, and we will not use 1, 2 and 3. In our normal way of talking, we will say the first element is alu, but when we are writing code, we will say 0th element is alu. The first element is gobi and the second element is palak. If we are talking in terms of writing the code, but if we are saying normally in our day-to-day language, we'll say first element is alu. But we have to keep in mind while writing code, this becomes the 0th element, right? So now, if I want to take out alu from this, if I want to take out index alu, okay, so we want to access this value from this list. So the syntax for that is I'm going to say x, and I'm going to say, using square brackets, I'm going to say 0. This will fetch me the first element of this list, which is alu. If I want to, this process is called as indexing, or you can also say accessing the value. Accessing the value from list. I'm trying to access. So I have a list and I'm saying, give me the first element of this list. And the first element of this list, the index of that is going to be 0. This is the only thing you have to keep in mind. This might be slightly uncomfortable for a lot of people to start counting from 0. But once you start writing code and once you get familiarized, this will become second nature. But just keep in mind that the counting always starts from 0. Now, if I want to access the first element, and when I say first element, actually I mean the second element, which is gobi. The index of that is going to be 1. So I'm going to say x of 1, and this is going to give me gobi. This process is called as indexing. Now there is also slicing. Suppose if I want to take out only first two elements, or if I want to take out only last two elements, all those things we will see a little bit later. I think that automatically follows if you understand indexing. Now if you want to access the last element, okay, we also use the index of -1. A little bit of more explanation on this I will give you in the next video, but just to mention here, if I want to access the last element, then I can use x of -1, and this will give me palak. So if you add minus, that means we are counting from the end side, or we are counting from the right hand side. If we say x of -2, this means give me the second last element, so this will give me again gobi. Okay, so this is the only thing I wanted to talk about, which is index or position. what are the index or what are the positions. So index is 0, at address 0 I have Alu. So this is the value and this is the index. Index is 1, the value is Gobi. The index is 2 and the value is Palak. And this concept of index and a value will be carried forward to other data structures also. Even in dictionary we'll have something called as a key and a value, index and a value. At what position we have what. Okay, what is the address and what is the value inside that. And this is a very fundamental thing that will be used in almost any data structure that you learn in any language. Fourth thing that I want to mention about lists that I forgot earlier is that lists, the nature of the list is heterogeneous. The nature of the list is heterogeneous. What does that mean? What does heterogeneous mean? Heterogeneous means that a list can contain different data types. If we are having a string in a data type, for example, here in this example, we are having strings in a data type. So we are not bound to have only strings. If we have integers, we are not bound to have only integers. We can have a mix of integer, float, boolean, whatever we want. In fact, a list can also contain another list. A list can also contain another data structure like like a dictionary or a set or a tuple. So we'll see that later, but I'll just take 1 minute to just clarify on this heterogeneous part. So it is also possible that we can create a list, maybe y, which will be having integers 1, 2, 5, 10, and 15. Okay, it is also possible for me to create another list which will be 4.2, which is a boolean, and we can also have an integer, and at the same time we can also have a string. And it is also possible for me to have another list as a part of a list. So I can have maybe 4 and 3. Okay, and this is also a list. So you see this list contains a float number, it contains an integer, it contains a string, and it contains another list. And if I want to index it further, I can say z minus 1, I will get a list which is 4 and 3. If I do z of 1, which means 1 means second element, which means 5, I'll get 5. So lists are heterogeneous in nature, and this is there in Python. The general word for list as a data structure is called as array. Okay, implementation of array in Python is called as list. But and if you look at arrays in other languages or in some other frameworks, they may or may not allow heterogeneous values in a list, but the list in Python allows it. And so just keep in mind that not always it will be allowed. In other languages, if you look at lists, it might have a foundation of keeping it homogeneous. Even later when we look at some other implementation of list in Python, some other implementation of array in Python, we might be bound to have it in a homogeneous format, right? But list itself in Python is heterogeneous. Whenever you're dealing with lists normally, it is going to be heterogeneous. That is also something you need to keep in mind. So I wanted to take some time to clarify this, and now in the next video we will look at implementation of list, how we create list, and what are the different things that we can do a list, how do we mutate a list. And I hope you got an idea of what I mean by order. So there's an order, 0, 1, and 2. 1 comes after 0, 2 comes after 1. So there is an order. Some data structures don't have order, but lists have order. Okay, tuples also have order, but set might not have order, a dictionary might not have order. So having order is a property of a list, and also that it is mutable. If I want to replace this gobi with some other vegetable, I will be able to do that. All of that we'll see in the next video. But the takeaway from this discussion is what are lists, how are lists represented in Python, and what is the idea of index or position, and what are the values, what are the indexes and what are the values in a list. If you have understood this, then you are ready to go to the next video where we will try to explode lists in Python. Thank you.